Good evening. Before we say anything of consequence, may I ask that you arrive early, to your own life. Not to this room, not to this hour, but to that inner place where the mind ceases its rush and the heart lays down its arguments. Arrive before the advice, before the analysis, before the fixing. Let me explain the reason for that. In this work, meditation, stillness, is not a courtesy. Meditation is the most important part of our work. If the stillness is well entered, the rest of the lesson need not take place, because the lesson exists only to bring you to contact. Now that may sound strange to ears trained to look for ideas, techniques, and strategies. But I am going to tell you what of it. Words do not heal loneliness. Arrangements do not heal loneliness. A new schedule, a fuller calendar, 10 more friends on the telephone. If they could, the world would be well by now. All of that is nonsense when measured against the one missing element. You're not missing people. You're missing contact. And by contact, I mean that conscious awareness of the presence that indwells you and sustains you. The quiet knowing that you are not an isolated spark trying to light your own way, but a branch drawing life from a living vine. Now, whether this is your first time hearing this or your 21st, the principle is the same. Meditation is the most important part of our work because it alone opens the conduct to the source. Stillness is not a mood, it is a doorway. It is the moment in which we stop auditioning for God with our complaints and our plans and come instead for an audience. Silent, receptive, yielded. In that silence, there is a click, sometimes faint, sometimes like a rushing breath, a sense that the chest lifts and the burden lowers, and you know, without a word, that you are not alone. That is contact. That is the beginning of the end of loneliness. Now then, the promise of these hours together is not to give you comfort by eloquence. I have no interest in entertaining your despair. The purpose is to reveal why loneliness feels so final, because separation felt within masquerades as lack without, and to show you the way it dissolves when contact is restored. This is not mystical poetry. It is a practical law. When conduct with the infinite is established, the human sense of isolation loosens of itself. The outward harmonies you hoped to engineer begin to assemble, not because you chase them, but because the inner axis is set. So we begin, always, with stillness. We arrive early to our own life. We sit. We release the project of fixing ourselves. We cease petitioning for effects, and we listen. Be assured, no matter your history, no matter how crowded or empty your days have been, the remedy is not distant. The presence is nearer than your breath. Treat stillness as the primary work, and you will discover it. Contact is the secret. And in that secret, loneliness begins to lift even before a single circumstance has changed. Now let us be quiet, that we may know. Now let me put the question before you plainly, because if we name it truly, the healing has already begun. Is loneliness a circumstance of life, or is it a misperception, a felt sense of separation from the life that lives within you? You see, if it is a circumstance, then you must rearrange the furniture of your days, add more people, add more invitations, add more noise, and hope that the ache stops. But if it is a misperception, then the work is of another order altogether. Then the remedy is not out there in the shuffle of events, but here, in the clearing of awareness, in the contact we have just begun to honor. Now, whether you live in a house ringing with voices or you spend your evenings in quiet rooms, you know this paradox. There are those surrounded by family, colleagues, admirers even, who confess that an emptiness haunts them between smiles. And there are those in physical solitude who bear a different testimony, that in the hush there is a companion, not a fantasy, not a projection, but a living presence felt as warmth, as steadiness, as a sufficiency that does not lean on another shoulder to be real. What makes the difference? Not the head count. Consciousness makes the difference. Contact makes the difference. Loneliness, then, is a symptom, not a verdict. It is a real ache, yes, but do not let it pronounce sentence upon your life. Read it correctly, and it will guide you home. Read it as proof that you are unwanted, and it will drive you further from the one want that matters. The ache announces, you have drifted from the awareness of the very source by which you live. It is the pain of disconnection, not the proof of desertion. The presence has not moved. Your attention has wandered. And attention can return. Now I must be firm with you and tender about it. Much of what we do about loneliness is effect trying to cure effect. One condition leaning upon another condition. We think, if I had more messages, if my name were on more lips, if romance would arrive, if the calendar were full, then this vacuum would close. All of that may produce a glittering hour, a weekend of reprieve, but it cannot heal. Effects cannot heal effects. That is why the world grows busier and lonelier at once. We are feeding the ache with the same substance that made it hungry. What then is it that you truly desire under all these forms? Look honestly, and you will find a single longing wearing many masks. Union. Not union as attachment that fears loss, but union as conscious oneness with the life that is your life. The Father within, the Source, the invisible that breathes you. Messages, attention, friendships, romance, these are not forbidden. They are lovely fruits when they appear. But they are not the root. The root is contact. Restore contact, and you will discover that belonging begins within as a settled fact before it ever blossoms into the harmonies of outward companionship. And when the fruit comes, it will not be by chase, but by ripening. Now let us set the matter in the language of Scripture, for it states the principle so simply that a child can catch it. I am the vine, ye are the branches. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself, except it abide in the vine, without me ye can do nothing. And again, if a man abide not in me, he is cast forth as a branch, and is withered. Hear that word, withered. The branch is not scolded, not declared wicked. It withereth for lack of union. It is not judged, it is disconnected. That is the law of being, not a moral sentence. The life that surges through the vine is the only sap the branch has ever known, and apart from that life, it cannot do otherwise than fade. Now, I am going to tell you what of it. This is the condition of the human sense when it imagines itself an independent selfhood. We as human beings, living by personal will, personal planning, personal anxieties and ambitions, are like branches cut off, trying to pump sap from our own bark. And what are the symptoms? Exhaustion that coffee cannot hide. Anxiety that lurks beneath the smile. Compulsive scrolling at midnight because the silence feels too loud. Desperate over-talking to prove we are here and that we matter. The calendar stuffed with engagements that leave the soul emptier than before. All of that is not wickedness. All of that is withering. It is what happens when effect tries to live upon effect and forgets the source. Now then, mark this well. The cut-off feeling is not punishment from God. God is not withholding himself to teach you a lesson. The vine has not moved. The issue is that attention has wandered, identity has shrunk to the personal sense, and the conduct with the infinite is unattended. The outcome is natural, not penal. A lamp unplugged does not darken because the power company is angry. It darkens because its cord is out of the socket. So the lonely heart is not unloved. It is unplugged from awareness of love. How does loneliness fit into this? As the branch, severed, looks outward at other branches for sap, so the human sense, severed in consciousness, looks outward for life. Approval to drip like dew, companionship to serve as circulation, proof to flow like sustenance. It gathers more branches around itself, more contacts, more messages, more noise, and still feels dry. Because branches do not feed branches. A branch does not heal by acquiring more branches. It heals by returning to the vine. So does the lonely heart. Union, not accumulation, is the remedy. Now, if separation is the root, then social strategies alone cannot be the cure. Arrange all the twigs you please, bind them with clever cords, and you have a bundle, not a tree. You cannot braid withering into flourishing. Only reconnection can restore the sap. Abide in me, says the Master, not as a poetic comfort, but as a practical instruction. Return to contact. Let the conduct with the infinite be re-established in stillness, and you will discover that the dryness begins to lift before any outward change appears. Then, in due season, fruit, belonging, harmony, companionship will come as it always has, not by chase, but by life flowing from the vine through the branch. Now I want to say something to you as gently and as plainly as words will allow, because if this enters your heart, the burden will begin to loosen this very hour. You are not abandoned. You are not unlovable. The ache you feel is not the verdict of heaven. It is the sensation of lost awareness. Lost awareness of the union that is already yours. The vine has not withdrawn. The life has not refused you. Lo, I am with you always, is the promise. I will never leave thee, nor forsake thee, is the law. What then is this emptiness? It is the personal sense interpreting silence as absence, and that is a poor interpreter. It looks around and says, "No one sees me," when the deeper truth, the truth that heals, is, "I am not seeing the presence that sees me." Now be very sure of this difference, because it changes everything. Feelings fluctuate. The fact does not. Emotions are like weather over the sea, now bright, now gray, now lashing. And yet the ocean floor remains unmoved. So with you. The personal sense rises and falls, grows moody and then merry, lonely and then momentarily stimulated. And all the while the indwelling presence, the Father within, is steady, constant, faithful. Your heavenly Father knoweth your need before you ask. He does not appear and disappear with your moods. He does not enter on Sunday and exit on Monday. It is attention that wanders. It is identification that blurs. It is conduct with the infinite that is unattended. Now, I am going to tell you what of it. The cure you have been seeking in 100 proofs, proof that you are wanted, proof that you are chosen, proof that you are worth the trouble, is not the cure at all. Those are effects, and effects cannot still the ache of separation, because they arise and pass. Even a burst of human warmth, if it is leaned upon as source, will fade and leave the heart fearing the next ebb. What is needed is contact. And by contact, I do not mean a belief you hold for an hour, nor a mood that visits you like music and then leaves you quiet again. By contact, I mean conduct. A living connection with the life that is your life. An inner union consciously known, even wordlessly known, that establishes you in the fact of oneness. Once that conduct is felt, even faintly, the message inside reverses. Instead of, "No one sees me," there dawns, "I am seen, and in that seeing I am safe." Instead of, "I am unwanted," there is, "I am included in the life of God, and therefore in the harmonies that life ordains." Do not scold your pain. Read it correctly. It is not a condemnation. It is a homing signal. It summons you not to chase, not to plead, not to devise clever proofs, but to return to the quiet where union is remembered. And so, mark this transition, because it will govern the rest of our work. If contact is the answer, and it is, then the method cannot be frantic thinking. It cannot be petition piled upon petition. It cannot be bargaining with heaven for better feelings. That is more noise, more branches rubbing together trying to make sap. The method must be stillness. The method must be the yielded, listening heart that ceases from self-assertion and lets the presence bear witness to itself. We shall go to God not for an audition with our needs, but for an audience with the Living One. In that audience, contact is restored, and in that restoration, loneliness dissolves at its root. Now we must face a correction that will seem hard, only until you taste its freedom. Much of what passes for prayer is auditioning our loneliness before a God imagined to be somewhere else, holding the goods. We go with our shopping list. Send me companionship, send me a message, send me someone who will finally see me. I am going to tell you what of it. All of that is nonsense if union is what we seek, because every request for an effect confesses that we believe ourselves separate from the cause. It says, "You are over there with love, and I am over here without it, and perhaps I can persuade you." And that, my dear friends, is how petition multiplies the lonely sense, by dramatizing the distance it hopes to close. Now ask yourself, if God is love, must love be coaxed to love? If your heavenly Father knoweth your need before you ask, is he withholding light until your performance pleases him? Of course not. If you could pray for something and get it as a reward for better words or louder weeping, you would have a dreadful caricature for your God, parceling out good to the best pleaders and letting the rest wither. No, the vine does not ration sap to a branch that composes the finest petition. The vine gives because giving is its nature. Our trouble is not a stingy source. Our trouble is inattentive awareness. Therefore, the corrective must be just as plain. Stop praying for effects. Do not pray for companionship as an object. Do not pray for a person to text you, to notice you, to arrive at your door. Do not pray to be filled with attention or adoration. Those are effects. Seek them as causes, and you secure only their shadows. Make your prayer a conscious union with God. Go to God not for an audition with your needs, but for an audience with the living presence. Not to perform your hunger, but to be still enough to receive the impulse of truth. Now then, here is why. Petition implies a God at a distance to be convinced. Communion reveals God at hand to be known. Petition tries to change God's disposition. Communion changes our awareness. Petition shouts into the wind. Communion listens into the silence. And it is in that listening that the conduct with the infinite is re-established. Be still and know that I am God. Not be frantic and inform, not be clever and persuade. Be still. Let the personal sense lay down the gavel and cease rendering verdicts. Sit without agenda, without bargaining, as one who consents to be loved rather than one who debates his worthiness to be loved. And what do you do in that stillness? You listen. You rest in the wordless assurance that the Father within is the life by which you live. If thoughts rise, let them fall away. If longings surge, let them be gathered up into the simple prayer of availability. Here am I. No pleading, no engineering, no scripts performed for heaven. Only a quiet heart consenting to union. In that communion, the ache loosens at its root because the sense of separation thins out and the click of oneness begins to register. Afterward, when outward harmonies appear, new friendships, natural messages, doors opening, you will know they are fruit, not proof, because you were already full before they came. So let us end this part with the law that liberates. We do not go to God to get. We go to God to be. And in being, we discover that the Father within me, He doeth the works. Now let us come to the heart of it, to what the Master named plainly. The kingdom of God is within you. Not a metaphor to cheer the lonely hour, not a doctrine to be memorized, but a discoverable presence, an interior reality that can be consciously touched. I am going to tell you what of it. Contact is not an idea about God. It is the felt recognition of this kingdom within. It begins as an inward shift before it becomes an outward change. If you look for fireworks, you will miss it. If you expect a parade of sensations, you will call the treasure nothing, because it arrived like still water. Now, in the early stages, be prepared for this. You will sit in the quiet, and your mind will trot out its errands. The body will fidget. The personal sense will whisper, "Nothing is happening." All of that is old habit, not evidence. The work is not in producing sensation. The work is in consenting to presence. And often, oh, so often, the first sign is small. A release somewhere in the chest, the breath remembering itself, the forehead softening, the heart not racing to the next argument. Then a faint but unmistakable click. No sound, yet a recognition. I am not striving alone. Something here is enough. That is contact in its tender dawn. Do not despise the day of small beginnings. If that contact is there, the seed is alive and it will grow. Now then, with that click comes an identity reframe, even if you cannot put words to it. The inner self of me is the inner self of you. There is only one self. This is not poetry. It is the fact by which love becomes natural. In that recognition, isolation is unmasked as a misreading. The personal sense, which thought itself a solitary spark, feels itself included in a single life that animates all. The I that was fighting for air rests in the I that is life itself. I live, yet not I, but the life of God liveth in me. When this dawns, even a little, the ache of apartness loosens because the ground of being is shared, indivisible. Do not fear that such realization cancels human relationships. Quite the opposite. It cleanses them of desperation. When you no longer grasp at a person as a lifeline, the person is free to be a vehicle of grace. Companionship ceases to be a sponge for your lack and becomes an overflow of your fullness. You will find you can love without leaning, serve without self-erasure, speak without performance, listen without hunger. And if new harmonies appear, and they will in their order, you will greet them as fruit, not medicine, because the healing preceded them. So mark it well. The kingdom within registers first as a quiet sufficiency, as stillness that is not empty but inhabited, as a gentle yes that asks nothing of the world to be true. Hold to that. Abide. The Father within you doeth the works, and in due season the outer will take on the shape of the inner song already sounding in your heart. Now let us look squarely at why your coping does not work. Because if you understand this one point, you will stop wasting years trying to improve the decorations on a disconnected room. I am going to tell you what of it. Most of what we call coping is effect attempting to fix effect. Busyness is an effect. Entertainment is an effect. Over-communicating, peppering the air with messages and check-ins and clever posts, is an effect. Relationship chasing, rushing from one promise of recognition to the next, is an effect. Even the self-improvement loop, another course, another journal system, another tweak of the morning routine, is, unless it restores contact, just another polished effect. And effects cannot heal effects. Now watch the pattern, and you will recognize your own footprints in it. A lonely thought arises. I am unseen. I am outside. And immediately the mind reaches for an external adjustment. Fill the schedule, cue the series, text 3 people, optimize the diet, set a new goal. For an hour, a day, sometimes a week, a surface easement comes. Then, as the novelty wanes, the ache returns, often sharper, because the root was never touched. You add a second fix to sustain the first, and a third to disguise the second. And you wake one morning with a life stacked floor to ceiling with props and no quiet space to breathe. That is not sin. That is withering by complexity. It is a branch busy among branches, forgetting the vine. Now then, mark this in your own experience. Loneliness spills its demand into the whole being in a triad: mental, moral, physical. Mentally, the mind races. It constructs stories, prepares speeches, plans encounters, argues with phantoms, and in the noise, wisdom's whisper is drowned. Morally, not meaning good or bad in the scolding sense, but in the sense of inner integrity, the center blurs. You consent to what does not honor you. You posture. You overpromise. You become a performance instead of a presence. Physically, the body tightens. The breath grows shallow. Sleep frays. Tension knots in the shoulders and in the gut. And then, in that condition, you ask another effect to relieve effects. It cannot. My people have hewn them out cisterns, broken cisterns, that can hold no water. That is the picture. You lower your bucket. For a moment, there is dampness on the rope, and then the thirst returns because the container cannot keep what it seemed to give. Now, I am not asking you to condemn your coping. Compassion, not scolding. Those gestures were the best attempts of a heart that had lost sight of the well. Be grateful they kept you moving until you could hear this. But see them for what they are. Attempts to drink from a broken cistern. Do not dedicate your life to building better buckets if the well is cracked. Do not refine your distractions and call it healing. The remedy is not bigger effects or brighter effects. The remedy is the cause. And here is the turn that frees you. If effects cannot heal effects, then we must go directly to the source. Into stillness, where conduct with the infinite is established. We do not add another activity to the stack, we remove the stack so that the living water may rise. We do not plead for stronger sensations, we yield for deeper contact. In that contact, the mind quiets without management. Integrity regathers itself without vows. The body remembers its breath without command. From there, whatever outward changes are needed will appear of themselves and will last, because they are born on sap, not squeezed from bark. The Father within me, He doeth the works. And when He doeth them, there is nothing to maintain and nothing to fear will fade. Now let us be very still, for we are going to the cause. Now we must put feet under this, because if this remains a lovely idea, it will do you no good. Meditation is the most important part of our work, and practice is the way you honor that. So set an appointment with God, not when you feel like it, not when the noise dies down, for the noise never volunteers to die down, but a definite hour. Morning before the day begins, and evening before you hand the day back. And, if you can, a few brief pauses in between. 2 or 3 minutes when you withdraw from the stream and remember the source. Come a little early inwardly. As you would arrive 20 minutes of 8, so the meditation might begin at 1:45. Arrive early to your own heart. Lay the day down before you begin. Turn the telephone face down. Close the door. Let the shoulders drop. Let the breath be as it is. Now when you sit, do not attempt to force anything. This is not concentration. This is not making silence by strength of will. All of that is nonsense. Concentration fatigues the branch. Union feeds it. The inner posture is simple. Yielding, listening, receiving, consenting to presence. Go to God for an audience, not an audition. You are not there to convince God of anything. You are there to be convinced by God of everything that is true. If you wish for a doorway, take a simple phrase, not many words, just a key, and use it to open, then release it. Speak, Father, or Thy presence is here. Or, if you like the psalmist's word, be still and know. Whisper it within once or twice, not as a mantra to pound the mind quiet, but as you would knock lightly on a familiar door. Then let the phrase fall away and listen. Sit as one who expects the breeze at dawn, not as one who manufactures wind. Now then, a correction. In that quiet, stop rehearsing the story of your loneliness. Do not polish it for heaven. The name and form of it, who left, who forgot, what they said, let that dissolve in the light of awareness. Each time the personal sense begins its speech, let it be gathered into a gentler consent. Here am I. Return to listening. If images crowd in, neither quarrel with them nor court them. Let them pass as birds across a wide sky and resume your soft inward hearing. Give this appointment at least 15 minutes, more if love draws you, less only if the time is clean and not stolen from duty. In the middle of the day, give it 2 minutes here, 3 minutes there. Close the eyes at your desk or turn away from the clamor on the train and release that quiet word once. Thy presence is here. Then listen. No asking, no bargaining, no engineering, only availability. Now I must say this plainly, so that you are not frustrated by your own effort. Contact is not manufactured. It is permitted. The personal self cannot crank the handle and make God flow. When the managing self grows still, the Father within doeth the works. Some mornings you will sense the click at once. On other days it will be faint, like a hush at the edges of thought. It makes no difference. Keep the appointment. Faithfulness establishes conduct. A wire laid and relayed becomes a line. A line becomes a channel. A channel becomes a living current. Then the outer harmonies, the longing, companionship, right activity, will come of themselves because the sap is flowing, not because you have tied more branches around your loneliness. Make this your way. Arrive early inwardly. Speak the simple word. Release it. Listen. Consent. Stop performing your ache. Let presence announce itself. Do this, and you will learn by living that stillness is the discipline that establishes contact. And in that contact, the Father within you, He doeth the works. Now let me show you how this works in life, because principle that does not flower into demonstration is only a pleasant theory. I am going to tell you what of it. When conduct with the infinite is established, even lightly, even as that gentle click, the law of unfoldment begins to operate. Things start to arrange themselves from outside. You do not draw charts for it. You do not rehearse strategies for it. The Father within you doeth the works, and the works appear where you could not have planted them. The branch does not run around the orchard looking for fruit to tie on. It abides, and the sap carries the pattern into form. Now, with loneliness, the demonstrations are of a kind you will recognize. One morning you rise with that quiet sufficiency still humming in you, and before any plan is made, a message arrives from a name you had not seen for years. No drama, just a natural hello that feels like the breeze through an open window. Or you enter your workplace, and someone who was always brisk and distant sits beside you and, unforced, begins to speak as if a wall had been forgotten in the night. A family table that had been a tight place loosens. A small warmth returns to a conversation where only effort had been. Sometimes with a neighbor, an old soreness softens, and a simple reconciliation comes about as if guided by a hand you did not extend. And sometimes the first demonstration is inward. A deep contentment arrives without a single new face in your day. Peace that is not loneliness anesthetized, but loneliness dissolved at the root. Mark that well. It is a real outcome. The ache is gone, and nothing outside has earned it. Now then, note the order, because this will save you from confusion. First, union, then harmonies. Often quietly, often without trumpet, often with surprise. You will find, do not be startled, that the phone rings more when you do not need it to, that the invitation reaches you after you have ceased to chase it, that you meet eyes on the street and recognize a friend you have not yet met, and in a week, that friend is at your table, not by design, but by life. The pattern is always this: abide, and fruit follows. Advertise, and the calendar fills, but the heart stays empty. Now a correction, so you do not turn gold into straw. Do not use meditation as a bargaining chip. I will sit 15 minutes so that God will send me company. All of that is nonsense. We do not go to God to get. We go to God to be. Our aim is God consciousness, not a social outcome. Yet, and this is the wonder, when the center is God, the circumference takes care of itself. Companionships appear, reconciliations ripen, right activity finds you, because the sap is doing what sap must do. Those things happen from outside. They are brought to your doorstep, and you will know them by the ease with which they fit, asking nothing of you but your yes. And as union deepens, identity shifts. The inner self of me is the inner self of you. There is only one self. You cease approaching others as wells to be drained. You meet them as expressions of the same life. Need loosens its grip. Recognition takes its place. My conscious union with God results in that oneness with those necessary to this unfoldment. Then belonging is no longer something to secure. It is the atmosphere in which you move. You discover that you are at home before you arrive, and where you are, home springs up. Contact does not merely soothe loneliness. It produces belonging as the outer fruit of inner union. The Father within me, He doeth the works. Now we have come to the place where words must make way for what words were sent to serve. Let me gather it to a point so clear that your heart can carry it home without strain. The lonely cry, "I am alone," is not answered by a crowd gathered around the cry. It is answered by the realization of presence, the rediscovery of the kingdom within, the felt contact that reveals, "I was never outside of love. I only lost awareness of its nearness." Then, and only then, people, places, and harmonies take their rightful station, not as saviors to be clutched, but as fruit born of sap, as appearances of a life already whole. Now let us be very still together. Not as a trick to get somewhere, not as a last effort to win a feeling, but as consent. Close the argument. Lay down the plea. Let the shoulders fall and the inner voice whisper only this: "Here am I." Be still and know that I am God. Let the breath remember itself. Let the presence announce itself as it will. No audition, no report, no bargaining, only an audience with the living one. In this quiet, do not look for an object. Receive a subject. Do not search for a sign. Surrender to the signer. If a faint click comes, bless it. If only a hush comes, bless it. We are not manufacturing. We are yielding. The Father within us, He doeth the works. Now, from that hush, let a simple surrender rise. Not clever, not ornate, but honest. Father, I release the search for validation. I give up rehearsing my worth. I consent to be lived from within. I and my Father are one. Thy life is my life. Thy love is my love. Thy companionship is my atmosphere. Use me as transparency, not as performer. Think thy thoughts as me. Love thy world through me. Here am I. And let the truth of identity seal it. The inner self of me is the inner self of you. There is only one self. Therefore I cannot, in truth, be separated from life, for life is the self that I am. I cannot be separated from love, for love is the self that I am. I cannot be separated from companionship, for in the one there is no edge to fall from and no outside to be banished to. Where I am, God is. Where God is, I belong. And where belonging is known within, belonging appears without, quietly, lawfully, in order. So we close as we began, in reverence and in practice. Let us go to God for an audience, not an audition. Let us abide and allow the sap to carry the pattern of our good into form. Let us remember, in every pause of the day and every hush of the night, what cannot be said too often, because it is the law of our being. The Father within me, He doeth the works.